Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Paul Krogdahl and Ville. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Daydreaming, the kind we call Nordic Fintech Highlights this time around, where we're going to be looking at what has happened on the month of October here in the Nordics in the fantastic fintech scene that we have around. But before we get there, my name is Ville. I will be your host for this episode. And again, I'm joined as usual by my partner in crime and good friend, Paul Krugdahl. So, Paul, how is your life today?
My life is good. I think we need to stop calling each other partners in crime on a fintech podcast, right? There's too many connotations there to financial crime and
I was about to say that we should be more specific. It's financial crime, not just crime.
Exactly. Although now we're sort of, this is not by any chance a confession of guilt by Ville or myself. We have not committed any crime, be that financial or non-financial. We are good, law-abiding citizens who follow the straight and narrow and are very good and friendly to our neighbors and look after the old people. I think that categorizes everything nicely off for us there, Ville. I think we're safe now. If there's any legal people out there that want to actually assist us to make sure that we do not in any way get wrongly accused, then please do get in contact on Save Ville and Paul 11936. We look forward to hearing from you. It's getting cold, Ville. It's getting very cold. We have to change the winter wheels, and I believe I'm going to have to do it this weekend. It's time to move south like the birds.
Completely agree. The winter tire thing is kind of boring because again, I'm only able to get out like mid-November, which is going to be way too late, considering that we're already going to get snow and ice during this weekend. So we'll see. I guess I will be not driving anytime soon, but we will survive.
It begs the question, why on earth do you have to wait until mid-November? It's a process of jacking up a car, taking off the summer wheels and putting on the winter wheels. Or are you one of these lazy people that pay someone else to do it?
Yeah, so I'm one of those lazy people who not only pay someone to do it, but also someone to store them over the season. So again, they are somewhere in storage somewhere. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't get them out. So it is what it is.
Okay.
Good, but enough about the weather and winter tires and driving conditions here in Finland. We are also, of course, joined as usual by Janne from Helsinki Fintech Farm. Janne, how are you? I met you just a few days ago in Oktoberfest, which was kind of fun. But how's your life otherwise?
Good. To continue with the weather today, when I walked to the office, I was listening to Guns N' Roses song about the cold November rain, and they wrote that song in California. They had no idea what the shit were they talking about.
Couldn't agree more. It is literally November rain today here in the Helsinki region, but I heard it's actually worse. It's actually snowing in other parts of Finland. So let's see how things will play out. But good. Enough with the chit chat. Let's go on. Let's get on with the show. So as we are with the Nordic Fintech Highlights episode this time around, as usual, we start by asking you, Janne. Well, first of all, do you have a joke for us?
Yes. Do you want it now or later?
I think we're going to have it now because I'm hosting. It's my domain, my rules this time.
Good. I was trying to avoid the political jokes on this show, but now I think the timing is perfect. So, why does Donald Trump support Bitcoin?
I have many guesses, but I'm going to let you ask.
I'm really worried about where this episode is going. We've already, potentially insinuated financial crime, and now we're attacking Donald Trump. So, we're going to have to mark this episode as listener beware, right?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, because it's very controversial, extremely unpredictable, and associated with tax evasion.
Oh God, we're gonna get so.
We're going to hell. We are going to hell.
Yeah. So, dear listeners, if you never hear from us after we publish this episode, now you know why. And we apologize to everybody listening, and just say that on with the show.
Janne, I love you, man. Thank you.
Very good. But Janne, I mean, we do have two traditions here in the Nordic Fintech highlights show, and one of we just covered. The other one, of course, is that we need to ask you, how was the month of October 2024 now for fintech here in the Nordics?
Yes, absolutely. I have to repeat myself in the beginning because, as we noticed in the previous episodes, first it was very quiet on the funding side because of the summer, but then September was quiet, and now it was the fourth month in a row which was quiet. So this is no more a coincidence, and it's been noticed as a trend also globally that the fintech funding is kind of stuck for now on. But then otherwise, there's plenty of things happening. So regarding new launches, well, Apple launched that they will or announced that they will have now the tap to pay feature in Sweden, and it took literally like 2 days, and all the big names like Adyen and Viva launched it in Sweden. That's of course interesting. We'll get back to that. And then regarding partnerships, of course, a lot of stuff going on still in the open banking and payment side, both consumer and business side. Also things like how you can utilize open banking on compliance and data enrichment. So that's a little bit of a new vibe there. Danske Bank was visible for 3 new tech partnerships. Otherwise, banks were announcing their Q3 results. That was mostly as predicted. Nothing like pretty solid results. Nothing too dramatic there. And then there were a whole lot of M&A activities in the banking space. So Multitude, they secured a stake in Lia Bank. TF Bank invested in Redeem Capital, and then DNB from Norway made a strategic move and acquired Carnegie. So actually quite a many transaction in only the Nordic banking space. So a lot of things going on. And then if you have noticed, so we also at Fintech Farm launched the annual report on the top 20 biggest fintech startups and companies based on their 2023 revenues. So that's also something you can find on our website. But just to summarize, we can see the total revenue of the industry in Finland has been raising from like 1.5, 1.6 billions to 1.9. So that's a clear increase. On the startup space, we have a little bit less successful startups. So few interesting companies. Front AI, obviously an AI company powering a lot of chatbots, for instance, for banks. So they're already, after operating for under 5 years, so they're already in pretty good numbers. We can also see the expense management companies, Sevoy and Pliant, doing pretty well. Narvi, also the business account provider, did 1,300% growth rate. So a lot of success stories there, but otherwise the startup space is maybe a little bit more quiet. Then when we go to the scale ups, we have some familiar names there: Voima Gold, Nord Crypto, but then also we can see Enfuse and Fennoa, who's been doing pretty solid growth, continuing on that path. Financial software companies really making waves there. So Snowfox AI, Abidia, Renance, for instance. And then if we go to the big corporations, surprisingly, Epassi, who's been acquiring tons of competitors. They are the biggest company, almost 700 million in revenue. Disclaimer, that's all the transactions going through them, but still remarkable job. And then good thing to see that also these big fintech dinosaurs like Multitude, Basware, Samlink, Administer, they are also, all of them are still growing. So even though they are 20 or 40 years old companies, so they're still able to generate growth. So I would say all good in fintech land, nothing too dramatic, but I think we're on the right path. Maybe to summarize, quality over quantity, some consolidation happening, companies going out of market, but then a lot of acquisitions happening. Also financial software, like I mentioned, that's clearly like a profitable area of fintech. You can see companies making like 30% profit margin, not just burning venture capital money. And then of course AI. Not so many AI specific companies, but more companies who are integrating AI all the time. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell. But yeah, fantastic amount of news. I can only agree. I looked at the newsletter and I started to think that, wow, this fintech thing is picking up again. Maybe it's because we are heading towards the end of the year, and a lot of companies always want to save the news before the holiday season starts. But I do feel that there's some atmosphere of we've been turning a page now from the almost like a little bit of a quiet period, and we're moving into maybe the next phase of growth. Maybe, I don't know. How do you feel, Paul?
Well, I first of all, I think that you missed out the most important piece of news, Janne, in the fintech world of the Nordics associated with October, and that's the fact that both Ville and I had our birthdays. But also associated with that, I'm very disappointed and saddened of the fact that you're referring to companies that are 30 to 40 years old as dinosaurs, which actually means that not only did Ville and I come of a certain age, you're also defining us as dinosaurs, which means that we want to fire you from the podcast. I'm sorry.
That being said, I did watch all the Jurassic Park movies, and I think the dinosaurs are kind of cool. So
yeah, that's a positive reference to be a dinosaur, like Metallica.
This episode is going down the toilet fast. Okay, back on track.
We're balancing between sarcasm and actual news here quite well, I think. So I think this is going actually quite well. No worries. So moving on, as usual, and thanks for the summary there, Janne, and again thanks, Paul, for those fantastic comments on the concept of dinosaurs. But moving on to the actual deep dives of individual news articles, as we usually do here on this show. So each of us has picked one or two news articles that we want to have a deeper conversation about. And as usual, we will start with you, Paul. So which news did you pick from this month's newsletter?
You're going to start with me. Yes. So as you said, lots of interesting news during the October month in the newsletter. The one that caught my eye is around Lunar. Lunar has announced a new, not as such chatbot, but voice assistants. I mean, we call them all chatbots at the end of the day when they're powered by some sort of augmented humanoid capabilities. In this case, they're making a big play out of the fact that they're using GenAI to power a voice assistant, and they're stating that they are the first in the banking scene in Europe to make this sort of capability available. I've not dived into that in enough detail to validate whether that is true or not. There are quite a few banks out there that are offering virtual assistants at one level or another, but maybe the fact that they are making a case on the fact that they're using Gen AI, not just machine learning or AI as such, has a valid point. They are also saying that whilst this capability will give a human feel to it and enable people to talk to a virtual assistant to help them with general banking capabilities, it will not offer financial advice, and as such it's more of a day-to-day banking kind of thing. They have an interesting video that they share with the announcement, which gives a demonstration of this capability, which actually it's It's a good video. I can see the benefits here. It talks you through canceling your cards because you've lost your wallet. It talks you through transferring money from one account to another. It's also quite good in the fact that obviously being generative AI, it maintains context as you're going through this. None of this, it forgets what you have spoken about. So I think it's a step in the right direction. One of the things that I'm still concerned about, and we talk about this quite a lot, is particularly from a banking perspective and a regulatory point of view, I think GenAI is still quite early, quite young. I think we still have a journey to go on. We've spoken about transparency, being able to prove how it has come up with the answers it's come up with, and those sort of things. But as long as it's not giving financial advice and it's just dealing with straightforward general inquiries, then I think it's good. And I'm looking forward to seeing some user feedback on this going forwards. At the moment, it's being released to a subset of clients from Lunar, but obviously they will expand that as they go forwards. So from my perspective, I think this is really interesting. I want to see more use of generative AI in the banking space. We've talked about this quite a lot when it comes to hyper personalization and a online offline hybrid capability. I still think you need to have that human touch in the background. We spoke about this before around the US election, where they have tried using GenAI to make phone calls or those sort of similar things. And the minute that it says, I am a virtual assistant, people are getting panicky and hanging up and those sort of things. So there is probably still a human element that needs to be put into this, but interesting stuff. Looking forward to more on this, and thumbs up to Lunar for yet again pushing the envelope. I mean, they're really good at doing this. They come out with new capabilities on an ongoing basis, and you have to take your hat off to the banks that step out a little bit. They might get it wrong sometimes, but for every time they get it right, it really boosts their brand and reputation, particularly in the Nordics.
Yeah, a few things stand out to me. I mean, I haven't had the chance to actually test it or even see the video you mentioned from Lunar Bank about this. But first of all, when they're saying that they are first, I do quite clearly remember that Klarna made a big announcement about the fact that they are using GenAI for customer service I believe in back office circumstances. But I'm not sure if they mentioned chatbots or not. But nonetheless, the customer service function in general seems to be the main focus for banks and financial institutions when it comes to the usage of GenAI and large language models specifically.
And I think that's more of a common one, where we're seeing that generative AI is actually being used as a enrichment to the customer service team rather than facing directly off to the end consumer or the customer. And I think that's where Lunar here is saying that they made a difference. They're actually facing this off directly towards the customer and removing the human element in the middle of it.
Yeah, and that brings me to my second point, which was that they are now, I think you mentioned that they are only have a small focus group that is testing it right now, and they're going to move on to broader adoption later on. I think they're right to be careful with this. I mean, we don't need to mention all the funny examples of how GenAI has done funny things in the world. I think the most direct related to financial service was the one where somebody was able to convince a bot by a car dealer to sell him a car for like $10 or something. If things like that just cannot happen in banking, as we have discussed many times in the podcast before. So interesting to see how they balance this a bit of an unpredictable nature of these GenAI models with the fact that you are indeed dealing with banking. They mentioned that they're not giving any financial advice. Yes, good. The other thing, of course, is that they will probably not anytime soon link this to any transactional capabilities. So actually being able to execute any payments or bill invoice payments or even apply for a credit decision or anything like that through an LLM interface. I don't think that's not in the cards in a very long time before these models become more accurate for the purposes of more deterministic processes like the ones related to financial services. But again, hats off to Lunar, same with you, and it's fantastic that they are testing this out.
Yeah, although their capability already now does support transfer of money, and the example they use is in the demo video, the customer says, "I set up a joint account with my friend for our holiday. Can you please transfer a couple of thousand Danish kroner from my normal account to that account?" So it's transferring money, it's supporting the transfer of money, and depending upon how you interpret that use case, it is a joint account with a third party, which means that potentially it is not within your private account listing. It is potentially in a virtual account shared with someone else.
Interesting. Again, thanks for correcting me then in that case, because that immediately makes it it's much more high risk in terms of what kind of access it has, that actual API transactional access. So yeah, wow, let's see how fast they're able to roll this out in any significant scale. I would believe that they would have to do very extensive testing before they're doing that in any larger scale. But Janne, would you trust an LLM bot to do your invoice payments, for example?
Not necessarily. I think so far, like, we are still in a phase, I think, that everything should be able to be done through an UI. And if you need to call the bank, it just means that you have a bad UI and it's lacking features because you have to call the bank. And now maybe they are trying to turn the customer service people into bots. But primarily the first problem to solve is that you can easily do all the features or all the things, transfers, whatever, invoice payments yourself. But now, yeah, I have to say that that's how I prefer it, and I think a lot of people prefer it. But now recently I've been using some software where there has been a pretty good like add-on chat, like it kind of combines you using the UI and then you can ask the questions and give some commands to the chatbot. So I see potential there, but interesting to see where we're heading. Now I think like there was quite a big buzz around, Alexa, Echo, Siri kind of things when they became a bigger thing almost a decade ago, that, hey, can we also start to use this in banking? But then I think the kind of hype went down, and now we're coming back.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do remember the time when these voice assistants were a new thing, and everybody was waiting for the banks to do something around it. There's obvious security questions related to those voice interfaces, and I would presume that those same security questions would apply for large language models, and maybe even more than with just simple voice assistants. But again, hats off to Lunar for moving forward in this space boldly. Let's hope that this is not just for the press release, and they will actually make something out of this, because somebody needs to be the pioneer in this space. Very good. So moving on, over to you, Janne. I believe you have some interesting news that you picked for us this week.
Yes, so I picked the news about the subscription management tool, fintech called Minna. It's a Swedish company, and they've been doing like a plugin for mobile banks where the user can see what are your subscriptions and then manage them. So easily in modern world, you end up having way too many subscriptions and accidentally spending a lot of money. Minna has been working on that, and now Mastercard announced that they will acquire the company. And it's interesting to see what's Mastercard's plan. Will they start to sell it like separately or how? I'm not really sure about that. But then generally, if we think about this kind of features, I've been still thinking like, why so few banks has it? Because I think that's a very kind of useful basic stuff. I'm using a bank which has the feature, but still most of the banks don't. And I would assume that with modern tech, it's not rocket science to have you don't need a super advanced algorithm to pick from your transactions that, hey, these are repeating costs, and you can import the name of the usual suspects, Netflix and Spotify and so on. But the banks have not been doing that themselves. And then I also understand that adding a plugin like like Minna is neither a very straightforward process for a traditional bank. So yeah, I'm not yeah. It sounds quite easy, but I'm still wondering like what's the difficulty here. But I don't know. Maybe you guys can enlighten me.
Yeah, maybe I'll give a few comments, and Paul, you can then fill in the gaps. I think you're right. Identifying that certain transactions are going to well-known subscription services, that's not the difficult part. Identifying those indeed is already done by many banks, either by themselves or through these service providers like Minna. That's not the difficult part. What I believe, and this is moving slightly to the speculation part, is that one of the key critical things that they do offer is the ability to actually stop those subscriptions in a very easy way. So again, if you get a summary of you're paying like I don't know 150 euros per month for subscriptions, getting a breakdown and saying, would you like to cancel any of these plans? Then having that done with a single click, so being all kind of authorized through the bank to that service provider to cancel the subscription. That is the more difficult part to maintain, first of all, and keep track of all these providers of different kind of subscription services. I think that's the bit that has been the sweet spot for players like Minna. And as the subscription models become more mainstream all the time, it seems like you cannot practically buy anything these days without being subjected to some kind of a subscription that you have to pay every month. I think these services are becoming more and more important for consumers, and I would believe that most financial institutions, at least the ones who are responsible, will offer services like this either in-house or through a third party. There are others as well available, of course, in the Nordics as well, as we know. So Subayo is another one that is being used quite commonly. And then, of course, Minna now being part of Mastercard is an interesting option as well. But Paul, have you actually used any of these subscription management services, or are you completely subscription free?
Lots of different points here. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right, Ville. The core value in this is a consent management thing rather than anything else. It's you are, as a consumer, handing over consent to a third party to help you to manage all of your subscriptions across the board. Secondly, if I remember correctly, most of these subscription management tools don't intercept your transactions and payments and therefore try to identify your subscriptions. You actually have to tell them the subscriptions you've got, but then it will manage it for you. I could be slightly wrong here, but I seem to remember that being the main normal mode of operandum. I seem to remember, didn't Nordea partner with Minna at some point? Because I actually came across Minna when they were Minna Tjänster very, very early on at the beginning. And they were part of the Nordea Accelerator program at that time. So I have a recollection here, and maybe you know better, Ville, that Nordea has got the Minna capabilities integrated into their mobile app, but I could be wrong.
Well, I can confirm that there are subscription management capabilities integrated into the Nordea app. Whether or not that's Minna, I'm not in a place to comment on that.
We're speculating on behalf of Nordea here, so maybe Nordea can reach out to us and tell us whether it is Minna or not, or maybe Minna as well. But no, it's. I think we're going to see an acceleration in this space, and I absolutely understand why it fits nicely in with your banking apps. One of the things that I ponder about is it only really works if everything is in a central place, i.e. if you're using it through Nordea, if everything you do is from your Nordea accounts, then it works nicely. But for instance, for me, yes, I have subscriptions, and some of the subscriptions are being paid from my PayPal account. Some of the subscriptions are being paid from my bank account. Some are being paid from my whatever account. So even if I wanted to use a subscription-based service to help me to manage my subscriptions, it would still be segregated because of how I pay for my subscriptions. And I think that's going to continue being the case. But at the same time, there is a potential benefit here for banks to try and consolidate people back into having one major relationship and stop them from multi-homing across multiple financial institutions. If the consumers see enough value in this, and as you said, Ville, it's becoming more and more normal for everything to be subscription based. So as we move more and more into that world, we're going to end up with a bigger headache trying to deal with all of this. So absolutely a value here.
That's true. Personally, I have experience using the solution by Revolut. So Revolut actually gives a nice summary for you, saying that you have upcoming subscription payments of this and this much. And then if you click that notification, then you're able to see the breakdown of where the money is going, and then potentially even able to react to those and cancel some of those subscriptions. So again, it is becoming mainstream, and I agree with you, Paul. The critical thing there is the consent management piece, because that can also be extended to all sorts of interesting things in the future, not only subscription management. If you kind of have the framework in place for managing consent for data flows and money flows between different parties in a more generic way.
But there is another part to this, though, which is back to the main news article that Janne has picked up on, and that's the fact that they are being acquired by Mastercard. And therefore the question of what's the value here to Mastercard. We are seeing both Mastercard and Visa acquiring a lot of fintechs. We've seen Visa acquire Nordic Fintechs almost in the same domain, right? And potentially I'm wondering whether this is Visa and Mastercard trying to, from the sidelines, maintain their dominance in the European market by finding other business revenues and business channels to continue having that foothold, because they understand that the European market is potentially looking to push them out a little bit as we centralize more and more going forwards. So I think it's a play to try and maintain dominance, and maybe to a certain degree Mastercard is doing a me too against Visa to try and equal the playing field.
I think the major networks are very, very keen on growing the business out of the classic card network payments, because they know that especially the account-to-account payments are going to start to move into that domain. So it's not going to be lasting forever as it is today. So again, this is a good example of trying to create a kind of data enrichment to the networks, becoming more of an intelligent network than just pure payment transaction network. I think this is part of that broader strategy, speculating obviously, but I think this is at least seems to be well in line with that kind of thinking. But moving on a bit, Janne, you had another thing you wanted to mention, I believe, beyond the story we just discussed.
No, that was actually also, I already had the top 20 thing in the beginning.
Oh yeah, you are correct. So we are free to move to my topic or a news headline that I picked for this week, and that relates to my favorite topic across almost my entire career in financial services, and that is NFC payments in one way or the other. The story I picked is the one that you already mentioned as well, Jan, tap to pay being enabled by major acquirers here in the Nordics, namely Adyen, SumUp, MyPOS, and Viva. I think they all made their own respective announcements during October about supporting the so-called tap to pay. So what is tap to pay? Well, in context of Apple, which is the specific news here, is the ability for merchants to accept card payments directly using iPhones only. You don't need a separate device. You don't need any kind of separate PIN pad or anything like that. You're just able to download the application, agree to the terms and conditions, get the right service from your payment service provider or acquirer, and then you as a merchant are able to start just using your simple iPhone to accept payments. That actually is a very interesting development from multiple perspectives. Personally, first of all, I remember when I was meeting Nokia already in the early 2000s, when they were just planning what they were going to do with NFC in general. And one of the things that everybody was talking about was, why can't we accept card payments using phones only? And quick result of that conversation was really that the standards for the EMV transactions, the ones who define the specifications for the payment devices and including PCI as well, they simply were impossible to implement on mobile devices. The reason why we're able to do this today is because not only have the standards for PCI and EMV evolved in a way that it makes it possible to have this kind of soft point of sale setups with an app-based approach and this kind of off-the-shelf NFC hardware. That has made it really possible to, first of all, launch these according to the rules in the network. But the technology in itself is actually not that new. So fascinating things. Whether or not this will be a popular solution remains to be seen. It does seem to be an attractive option, especially for the micro and very small merchants. If you're like a plumber or a kind of service provider, and then you're going into a gardener, you're going into homes, getting services, giving services, and then you're able to just use your phone to accept a card payment. Of course, that is very attractive. The other aspect of this is quite interesting, and that is the fact that this is for merchants and merchants only. Then the question becomes, well, why can't I just tap my phone to your phone, Paul, and why can't we move money between our accounts just with that NFC touch in a similar way? You're not a merchant, I'm not a merchant, so we are both individual persons. Well, that's not supported yet. Apple does have a concept for that called, I think, cash to pay, which they have launched in the US. But that actually requires that both of you are Apple Cash users and that you have preloaded your money onto the Apple Cash account. And then we're able to transact using that balance and that balance only. That is regulated activity and would require a specific set of licenses and approvals here in the European Union. And that's why Apple hasn't really launched that. But again, we'll see how things will move forward. I think this was an interesting step towards expanding the NFC ecosystem overall. There's one more news I wanted to mention, which is also NFC related from Apple front, and it is connected almost directly to this news on the tap to pay. And that is the fact that Klarna launched their buy now, pay later functionality integrated directly into Apple Pay. Before, of course, you were able to add your Klarna card or any other card to Apple Pay and use that as the source of funds for those transactions. But what's specific to this buy now, pay later functionality now is that when you tap your phone or when you are at an e-commerce site and you do an Apple Pay checkout, there's an option for you to choose buy now, pay later as the source of funds for it at that exact moment. They also offer what they call a very intuitive interface to choose what kind of an installment plan you want to have within the context of the Apple Wallet or the Apple Pay transaction. You choose and accept, and you get approved immediately for that payment plan. And then you can continue with the checkout. The payment will be finalized. The merchant will be compensated, I believe, immediately as a regular card transaction. But then you will have an option to pay in installments as a regular BNPL. So if the user experience is as good as we are grown to expect from Apple on this, I think this is a very interesting development in the world of buy now, pay later, especially if connect that with the fact that it's both NFC and e-commerce payments at the same time. Yeah, so that's a very long story on NFC and Apple. But what do you guys think? Janne, what do you think?
Yeah, I was actually thinking like now in this case when we have Apple Tap to Pay. So this is basically like within Apple's hands. So basically they are getting a commission on that one. And then if the NFC chip will be kind of opened up in EU, so then anyone can do kind of a card payment accepting software for an iPhone, and then Apple is not getting their share, right?
The acceptance part has not been part of the discussion, at least so far. Now I'm failing to recollect what did the decision say about acceptance, but host card emulation as such does not include accepting. So you're only emulating a card statically almost on the antenna, and then that information is being read by the payment terminal.
Okay.
But I don't think the software-based approach works for NFC, at least for the in the iOS decision that was made earlier.
Okay.
So in a sense, it's a good point, because I believe that Apple has been now, again, there's a lot of Apple NFC news in October, and I believe that this is all part of the campaign from Apple's perspective to ensure that people understand that what is the value of having the native Apple Pay enabled and being able to use the secure element, which is still off limits in the European Union for third parties. So again, they are kind of ramping up on that front and trying to create new kind of value propositions in form of this tap to pay, and then of course the buy now pay later integration, for example. So Paul, what do you think of all of this?
You brought up an awful lot of different points. I mean, first of all, the whole Klarna Apple thing. You know my view on buy now, pay later, so we're not going to go into that rabbit hole, but I'm not a big fan of buy now, pay later, so making it even easier for people to get into debt is not necessarily something that I support directly. But hey, if people understand what they're doing and can manage their financial well-being, then fantastic, that's great. On the whole NFC thing, I think it's great news. I think, like you said, it's really good for the smaller SME market to be able to reduce the amount of clutter you have in readers and terminals and everything else. Basically get rid of the point of sale system completely. I really do want to see this though coming to peer-to-peer. I would love to have the situation where I could use my Apple Watch and basically just ping it onto your Apple Watch, Ville, and maybe mobile pay will figure out a way of doing this. I know there are regulations, there are things preventing this from happening today in Europe, but there's going to be someone who finds a way around that. I mean, we had that with buy now, pay later. Someone found a way around it and suddenly it was big. So I think we're going to get that. On the other side of the coin though, one of the things that concerns me a little bit, and I'm pretty sure that there is solutions out there for this, but there used to be a time when there was scaremongering about people walking around with the smaller point of sale readers and then, on public transport being able to pick up potentially payments from unsuspecting numbnuts that are not looking after their devices in one way or another, or their cards in their pockets or whatever the case may be. Is that now becoming even easier? Are we getting to a point where I can have a merchant piece of software on my iPhone and then walk around and try and scam €5 out of everyone on the bus? Probably not. I'm pretty sure that that use case is not going to work. But again, as we get things simpler and simpler, faster and faster, and easier to use, sometimes the bad guys find better ways of taking advantage of that. So be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah. This urban legend of people going around with point of sale terminals and scanning everybody's butts when they see a wallet, that's been debunked quite thoroughly. Just 2 points on that. First of all, you do have to be a merchant with a licensed payment service provider in order to do that. So if you're doing that and you see an awful lot of suspicious transactions, small transactions coming from that merchant, you will be blocked, and basically those transactions will be rolled back very quickly. So it's very easy to detect this kind of behavior for one. The second thing is that even if you would be able to do that with conventional plastic contactless cards, now, what Apple is trying to do here is moving into the phone. And then if you do want to activate that payment capability, you do have to open up your phone and use biometrics to open it up. So again, if people are not able to just scan your phone in lock mode, for example, and get anything out of it, there's one small caveat to that, which is also interesting, and that's the so-called the express travel mode on Apple Wallet. So you are able to set, for instance, one of your payment cards to be in so-called express mode. The purpose of the express mode is that in some cities, you are able to just tap your contactless card at the gate for public transportation. and then you're able to kind of just get in, and it will be directly taken from your card, and there is no separate ticket required in those cases. The express mode makes it possible so that you don't have to unlock your phone. All you have to show is show your phone at the gate, and it will work. It will, in fact, even work if the phone is off. It's one of these features that if you run out of battery, then you're still able to continue your traveling on public transport. So is that then possible to be read with these kind of bot readers, as you mentioned? That's an interesting question that I guess we have to figure out. But I would say the threat of that quite low. But good. We are fast running out of time. We could continue forever, especially when it comes to NFC. There's no stopping me when talking about this stuff. Again, it's one of my favorite topics in the world. But we do have to save something for the upcoming episodes as well, for our listeners' benefit as well. Any final thoughts from you, Paul or Janne, before we close the episode today?
Nothing more from me.
Nice discussion about dinosaurs and bot readers. And maybe to the listeners, if you're coming to Helsinki for Slush, we have some fintech activities going on. You can find them on the side event side. And then week after that, we have the Nordic Banking Forum. We'll have Paul on stage. And if you're a banker or do anything related to Nordic banking, so be there.
I will be hanging around, not on stage this time around, but I'll be happily commenting from the audience, if nothing else, and really looking forward to the event as well. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. This was a fun discussion from multiple perspectives, like you mentioned, Janne. So I hope you enjoyed it as well, dear listeners, and you will join us for next time as well. As usual, subscribe, like, comment, share, do the usual things. We are on all the channels, and we appreciate and love each bit of feedback that we get, especially when it's a positive comment on one of these channels. That being said, until next time, this has been FinTech Daydreaming.
This is FinTech Daydreaming.